Hi everyone, so my name is Alex and I work for 7Veils. We are a social media marketing agency, and so we're in touch with everything going on Twitter, Instagram, etc. So we're seeing a lot of love and a bit of hate toward our industry, but the best people to speak about our industry are the people who are providing all the energy and all the beautiful faces of our industry. So can you please introduce yourselves? Whoever want to start, please. Lacey, are you ready?
Yes. Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Hi, so I'm LACEY STARR. I'm a performer and producer in the adult industry. I have been for around 10 years, and I came into the industry as a more mature performer, so that had its interesting its own set of interesting dilemmas, etc. But I'm very happy to be here, so thank you for inviting me.
Okay, while Alex's mic is mute, I guess I will go next. I'm COLTON REECE from Hawaii here. So as Kelly said, we definitely are reaching every corner of the globe. I am a performer and an exclusive for Falcon Studios, and I have been in the industry for 4 years now, I think. Yeah, this is coming up on 4 years. So I feel like a veteran at this point.
Thank you very much. Yes, I hadn't seen my mic was on mute. Thank you for that. And Prince Jean or Jean, I never know how to pronounce it. I am so sorry. Please tell me.
Hey everybody. So I'm a UK-based male performer. I shoot with different brands, often in America, and also shoot and produce sort of like my own content.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So what time is it? I think we can start. Yeah. So the first question, I think. Oh, here they are. New, so Pineapple and KACY. Hello, thank you for joining us. Can you please introduce yourself? So just to let us know your name, your relation with the industry, what do you do, and whatever you feel like sharing.
Starting with me?
Yes, we actually already introduced our other panelists.
Got it. Hi, I'm KACY. I go by the stage name KACY TGIRL. I've been in the industry for about 9 years, mainly for Groovy Productions, also OnlyFans. I'm also a full-service sex worker as well, and I try and be active in the transgender community. I have a little thing I call Positivity Tuesday, hashtag Positivity Tuesday. I've been doing on Twitter, where every Tuesday we try and tweet out good stuff for one day a week. It came out of Giving Tuesday the week after. I thought that was fun on Giving Tuesday. How about we do that every week and we call it Positivity Tuesday? I've been helping out very minor ways with Pineapple support for years. I was in one of their photo shoots. I've been on their radio show. I've done some of their panels, and I'm on their diversity committee. And that's it. Thanks, and sorry I was late. They're doing construction next door. I had to close all the windows.
Oh, no worries. I live in a very noisy place, so if you're here, I'm sorry for that. But thank you. That's great. A lot of stuff. Positive Tuesday sounds amazing. I think we can start. See, sorry about that. One of the most important point about the title of our topic for now is the keyword stigma. So I would like to know from you all, and it's a very family style. Everyone is a very open mind in our group, so it's totally cool if you just want to jump in and take and answer whatever you feel like. Please share your thoughts. So the first point that I would like to check with you all is the feeling about the stigma. What is this main stigma we were talking about is from the mainstream perspective, out the mainstream and outside of the industry, what is the main stigma they really build around our community and industry? Whoever feels like starting. Lacey?
I think for me, I see it as the main stigma is that the community outside of our own sex worker community is a sense that we are somehow less than because we do this work. And particularly, it is mainly females, not all obviously, but mainly females. Sex work, we're talking about sex work in general. So there's lots of various, jobs within that, and we all represent different jobs within that. We somehow, the image for femininity is that we're not kind of talking about sex all the time, or we're not, we're very kind of feminine, and then in private we do the sex bit, whereas sex workers are happy to be openly sexy, people talk about it, etc., and that somehow society perceives us to be less feminine for that, or less than by doing the job that we choose to do. For me, that is anyway the main stigma.
Thank you. Very interesting point. I never thought about that because, of course, I'm a cis man, so I have a hard time to think all the struggles cis women are struggling, and trans women are going through. So thank you. Okay, good point. I never thought about that. I think we can talk a little bit more about that when we have everyone's feedback. Who
Can
else?
I jump in
Maybe
for a
KACY?
second?
Yeah, because
I want to pick up on a point that Lacey made. There's a football player named Jimmy Garoppolo. He plays for the San Francisco 49ers. And at one point in his career, he was seen out in public dating a porn star. He was having a date with someone who is a porn performer. And after that, within the narrative of the sports media, some people refer to him as porn star Jimmy. And like this was a negative connotation. And then just recently it came up again, and there was a radio talk show, and there was a lady on there, a producer of the show, and she said she would never date Jimmy because he had been with a porn star. And how did she know what kind of diseases he had? Who he had, he slept with her. If he did, then he had slept with everyone she had slept with. And finally, someone called in, luckily, and said, how do you know who you been sleeping with? So it's just one of those things, an outside stigma, him just being somewhat tangentially associated with a porn performer, was hit with that stigma. So that was something when Lacey was saying that immediately popped into my mind that, and as we all know, especially after the 7-day moratorium recently here in the industry here in town, that we are, of course, some of the cleanest people who participate in sexual relations. So just to pick up on that, I totally hear what Lacey's talking about.
Yeah, and I think it's extremely interesting. We are very lucky to have you on board today to also go deeper from what Lacey was saying. Do you think that as a woman and then as a trans woman, from the two perspectives, do you think, what do you think about what Lacey was saying? Do you think that people judge you because since you're a lady, you're supposed to be not talking about sex or anything? And do you think that the fact of being a trans woman, people sexualize you more than a cis woman, for example? Or what are your thoughts about that?
Well, the thing that happens at times is as trans people, not just trans women, but I think it happens with trans men as well at times, is the fetishization of us. That, because literally I know that Kimber Haven, one of my colleagues, a trans performer, she talked about how she was always getting invited to FetCon, which was funny because she didn't have a fetish niche, but she was trans or is trans. And so that was almost considered a fetish, which was interesting because it's that sexualization in that sense that there is a little bit more, because we are the best of both worlds. We have the secret specialness, on and on and on, which, inherently has a sexualization to us because of that. The other thing when it comes to us is, that's a double-edged sword, that best of both worlds and secret specialness is, because as a trans performer, sometimes there are those who are tops, there are those who are bottoms, there are those who are verse. And it gets to be interesting that someone might see a performer, a trans performer, trans woman performer who is a top might not be as feminine as a trans woman or a cis woman who is only a bottom, for example. So that stigma at times can be attached to those, because I know performers who only trans women who are only tops, and they get a lot of that blowback, you know, when it comes to fans. And you know, I'm just talking about general narrative of people who see them then as less than feminine, so to speak, because they are a top in the trans performing world.
That's very interesting. Again, thanks a lot for sharing. This talk, I think, is going to be even more interesting than what I thought. That's amazing. Thank you so much. Personally, I'm very happy to be involved and to hear from you all. So speaking about tops and bottom, I don't know if it's related to the stigma from out of the industry, but Colton, do you have a point of view on that?
You know, I actually think that the Jimmy Garoppolo story is really quite interesting, because these two lovely women bring up this point that from an outside perspective on sex work, women are seen differently. And it is quite remarkable because, you know, you grow up with a very heteronormative mindset, even if you're gay, you're straight, you're anywhere in between, from the side to the, you know, covering all my bases there. You still grow up in this world, and it's quite fascinating because I will find myself watching pornography, and you look at the woman, if you are watching straight porn or whatever it is, very gay, by the way, and you sexualize the woman in a different context. You use a set of adjectives and nouns to describe the woman very differently than you do the male talent in the scene, right? And in bro culture, I mean, like, the dude is the top, he's cool, he's masculine, he's fucking the bitch, right? Like, he's all these things that we attribute to being a strong, virulent man, and the woman is, we can all put the list there. So the Jimmy Garoppolo story is really interesting to me because I would actually have seen that differently. Like, yeah, way to go, man. You're a football player that gets the really hot porn star. But in some ways, and I might step into some deep water here, is that it seems that women look at other women in sex work a little bit more critically than men do at women. And that, I guess, can parlay back to the top bottom idea, is that we all grow up, again, like I said, in this world in which heteronormativity defines the scope from which we understand and we categorize things. And we attribute, even in the gay world, these qualities to somebody who is a top and somebody who is a bottom. And more often than not, the positive ones are to that active partner versus the passive partner. I mean, I'm going to shut up now.
No, please talk as much as you want. And Prince John, if you had, is there anything you'd like to add?
Just on the 2 points, just in regards to the stigmatization of sex workers, because this really permeates all areas of society. So it's understood as a master disgrace, it's social discredited. Then you have derogatory terms like prostitutes, hookers, whores, which is often used to describe sex workers. You see it in interpersonal dynamics, so just conversations with Tom from down the road. You see it in the media, you even see it on the political sphere, you even see it in research literature. So many politicians, when they speak about solutions for prostitution, you'll see this exact quote in the media. Rather than solution for sex workers, they position sex, they position the sellers of sex as perpetuators of prostitution, and then that has a lot of negative connotations that are associated with it. So the subsequent adoption of laws regarding prostitution then leads to further divides. And the root of this, well, one of the roots of stigmatization is can be due to the way in which sex work is perceived in the eyes of the law. If you follow like all of the legislation across different countries, across Europe, across UK, across the US, you will see that the way in which the law perceives sex workers has a filter down effect towards them people in society, and then how your family, how your friends, how people react.
Your cut, I couldn't hear the rest of it, sorry.
Call me in Zoom. Sorry about that. I was like, I just heard numbers, apologies for that. Yeah, I think I made my point. I'd also just wanted to say that from an intersectional perspective, different elements of people's different identities do impact, I think, the masculinization or just being seen as more aggressive. So for example, if you speak to Black trans women, they'll pretty much always tell you that they are never, their femininity is always under attack. And even Black women who are cisgendered, their femininity is then also attacked as a result of the fact that trans Black women exist. Yeah, those are my 2 points.
If I could jump in for a second, because you raised an interesting point, because I actually, before this, I tried to get some input from some of my colleagues, I'd be the trans voice on this panel, for, so to speak, and speaking to a couple of the Black trans women performers, they mentioned how there's a lot of times an assumption that they will be a top. That's what they do, that they of course they're going to be topping in a trans scene, whether it be trans or trans boy or trans girl, that there's just an assumption with them that they are going to be the top. And that's, of course, not all of their preferences. That is not, every trans performer has their preference. But when it comes to what I heard from my Black colleagues was that, all the time, that's the assumption, is that we're going to be dominant, we're going to be the top, and that's just the way it is because, quote unquote, who we are.
Thank you very much for sharing. And also, so there is a chat. So if anyone from the audience has any question, you're very welcome to ask them in the chat. And for our panelists, if you want to share your social media or wherever people can find you and know more about you, because we only have 1 hour. So if they want to continue the talk or supporting you and becoming a fan, I don't know, you can share it in the chat. There is something that I wanted to add personally to this because it was so interesting. So of course, the feminine representation, yeah, I don't know, because I'm in a country that is very religious, and of course the figure of the woman is also the holy saint mother, whatever. So maybe the fact of being a mother, they expect the woman not to have any desire. I don't know where it comes from, but it's very strange. Yeah, I never thought about what Lacey was saying, that the woman is not supposed to show her desire. And that's very disturbing. And now for the football player, it's also, I don't want to get too far away from our industry perspective, but yeah, it's very interesting because what we're both saying. So this story about the football player dating a porn star, and then getting all the bad review about it. You're right, Colton. Maybe I expected this normal, regular, I mean, normal is not the word, but like this usual stereotype of, oh, the guy is fucking everyone, he's so cool, etc. It's weird because in France, they have this soccer player, Mbappe, who is eventually dating a trans model out of porn. And he's also receiving a lot of noise around this, like, oh my God, he's dating a trans girl. And so that's very, yeah, I don't know, the world is fucked up. The perspective that I would like to bring now is from the inside of the industry. You've been describing very well what the problem is with being a sex worker and the mainstream industry, but do you feel some kind of hostility or any kind of issue from the inside too of the industry? Whoever feels like.
I kind of want to build off of that because I think it goes into transgender topics are on my mind. I just literally had a conversation about this before this panel, but I have done a few scenes with trans men. I mean, I just consider them other boys and men that I've like worked with. And inevitably on the gay side, when a cis male does a scene with a trans male, the question that comes up from so many fans is, are you bisexual? Are you queer baiting? Are you straight? Because to like having sex with a man that possesses a vagina is incomprehensible to some people. And to be honest with you, up until a few years ago, to me, it may have been just as incomprehensible. But I think sexuality, as we all know, is a scale, and you grow with it. But it's one of the most perplexing and complicated things that drives me a little bit crazy, is that people will personify these insecurities and these issues upon performers who just make content that they want to make. And if you want to talk about the whorearchy, then you get grouped into like this. Now you're a bisexual performer in the gay world, which is like mind-blowingly just like a no-go. And I've heard so many just beautiful, gorgeous, very well-known performers that don't want to do anything outside of cis male because they're so afraid of the backlash they're going to receive. So
yeah, it's not the first time that I'm hearing this kind of feedback. Yeah, it is a very and you know what, and I understand what you were saying about, oh, I had to think about it because it's evolving. Maybe some years ago I would have thought that. And I remember that 2 years ago I had to market, not 4 years ago, I had to market a scene between a trans woman and a trans man. I was like, wait, is it straight porn? So because, and I was like, oh, okay,
blows
no,
my mind, right? And like, sorry, I'm a molecular biologist, and like, you look at how genes are activated, and there's all these little domains ahead of the gene. And what we've discovered is you can literally just piece and parcel them and put them in any order, and the gene will still work. And sexuality is kind of like that. I mean, I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this, but you can put a vagina on a man and I'm going to be interested in it. You put the vagina on a chick, it's not my thing anymore.
I'm
Right?
totally with you.
So, I mean,
it's fluid, and that we don't need to label everything. And it's just that sometimes it helps to put a label to understand
like that and how they work. So
something that's interesting with the labeling, because of course there's so much we do want to label everything. And I think something that's played into our industry is, of course, how we blew up on the internet, and then everything became tagging. You're tagging it, you know, from the very beginning, that was like so much of it, tags, you know, this scene is tagged, you know, trans, this one is tagged gay, this one is bisexual, this one is biracial. And so like in my little corner of the world for a while, of course, shemale porn, which I don't love the term shemale, but I knew years ago that's what got the clicks, because that's what everyone was searching for. So there was this little, this little byplay between how you would still market content, and what it meant to the actual performer. One time I screwed up early on in my Twitter career. I hashtagged something shemale, and it was another trans performer, and she just said, I am not a shemale. And I from then on I said, you know what, I effed up. Because I just was so used to, that was one of the tags, still is one of the tags used to promote our porn. Just like, for example, biracial, is another one, of course, which I heard from some of my colleagues. They're saying, that sometimes, why am I in a biracial scene? I'm just in a scene. But it's interesting how the internet and the way we promote, market, and the tags led into a lot more labeling than probably would have occurred naturally. It would have occurred naturally anyway, but I think it really ramped it up.
I think you're very right about the labeling. We want to put people in boxes so that we understand that's okay, there's trans over there, we've got gay over here, etc., etc. And I think the labeling keys into that, want to label and tag people so that we understand where they are, where we are. And also we label ourselves for our own kind of promotion, and because we're in this business to sell. So I might label one of my scenes as I'm an interracial slut who does this, I'm a whore and this and that, which I wouldn't normally talk about myself like, but in order to sell or in order to get the interest, we will put labels on ourselves that might seem derogatory to people outside of the industry, but actually we can, we're happy with them within what we do in order to promote, the scenes that we do, or the promotion that we like. But I think going back to the whorearchy that that we're talking about tonight, I think it is a class system, and of course it's a class system. There's a class system within society, and it's a huge industry, but our industry has its own class system. Of course it does. It always, we can't get away from that somehow. But I think what's important is how we see people within our industry, as in the different roles that they take on, the different ways they want to do their own sex work. It's about us not being judgmental, and it's about the way we just see people, rather than this one is a high class hooker or whatever, this one is not, they work on the street. That's the whorearchy that goes on, isn't it? And it's only in place because we keep it in place, with all our how we're brought up, as you were saying, Colton, about we actually, it's all fed into us from when we're small, about how we see people and the different jobs they do. So I think that's I'm really interested in hearing about from others about what you think about the hierarchy and how we see it ourselves within.
I think, sorry, I think we can just keep this part for the last one. I mean, I will let you speak, Colton, and then it's because I would like also to ask a last question about the label, since we were sharing about interesting things. But please tell us, Colton, what are you thinking about what Lacey was saying?
Well, on categories, right, they're intrinsic to who we are. It's kind of a mindless thing that we do, right? I mean, there's a story, a study, and it's somebody literally knocks on your door in the middle of the night and says they're in some weird reality television show, and they've been tasked with finding a 3-foot by 7-foot piece of wood. And if you can help him, he'll just give you 10 grand right there. No questions asked, right? And for most people, they'll just stand there and go, well, who the hell has a 3x7 piece of wood sitting around in their home, right? But the reality is that you are so intrinsically taught to think about categories, right? That your 3x7 piece of wood that is your door is not a 3x7 piece of wood, it's a door. So when somebody asks you for a piece of wood, you're like, when in fact, it's literally right in front of you. But we are just so taught, that's how we work. And the question you say is, how do we move from it? I don't have the answer. It's human nature. It's who we are. I mean, I have a box of photos over here that I've been scanning in, and the only way that's going to work is if I categorize every single one of those photos, date them, Christmas, Thanksgiving.
But this is where studies like science is, since you're a scientist, and I think that's where we can help, because when we share through language and we train our brains, because our brains are programmed to operate according to society and the codes we've been given since we were born. But by talking about it and by sharing, and that's why, for example, the perspective of you guys here tonight is very interesting, because you have 4 different point of views that are coming from backgrounds quite different, and that's why I think it's such a rich conversation. And what I wanted to hear is, but it's only if you want to open about that or not, you can just tell me to fuck off, that's totally fine. About the labels, for example, so the shemale label was a great one, because it brought the conversation around marketing, which is a big issue, because sometimes as marketers and business people, we have to market something and we know that it's not the way we would talk about the scene or the clip or the content. And but we know that people are searching through a quick example. I had this client that had a tube site. I don't want to share the name, but it's a tube site that was only about trans porn. And there was the keyword "she-male" in it. And we told him, look, it's going to be an issue if you want to work this marketing, because it's a kind of a banned word. It's not used anymore, etc. And said, yeah, but when I bought it, it's worth a lot because of the clicks and everything. So yeah, but society evolves. So I understand the struggle behind it. And the point of view that I wanted to ask is about labels. For example, Prince, how do you feel about all the labels, interracial, biracial, BBC? Is it something that you think offensive? Do you think that it's classifying as a stigma, or do you have any opinion about it?
I won't get too deep into this. One, because we don't have that time, and two, we just don't have that time. But there is a group within this industry. I don't know if anybody has heard of BIPOC, which is an organization that sits within within America, I should say, that looks at one of these issues that they look at is categories and the way in which specifically in which Black people are categorized. What I'll often hear from people who quite frankly aren't on the receiving end is that it's marketing, and what people who are on the receiving end of that categorization will often tell you is that actually it's not, and that these things have sort of deeper entrenched meanings within society, and how the way in which you're perceived affects our life to life. So for example, I was in LA for Why Not? Should I say? Yeah, I will share this. I was in LA for the Why Not Awards. And people may or may not have seen the tweets, but I was sat at Wilcox Avenue in the Chinese. Some other person was kicking off and the police were called, and immediately they saw me in the corner eating Chinese, and immediately I had 3 gardens in my face, like right there. And these things happen all the time because of the stereotypes that Black people are put into. We are often seen as aggressive. We're going to immediately be labeled as that. And in the industry, it reflects in some of the scenes in which, if you look at especially what Black women have had to go through and endure, some of the things that they have shared online publicly are absolutely mortifying. So marketing I understand marketing, I understand what people are searching for, but also for many people who are on the receiving end, it correlates their experiences that they'll actually have on their life. So that's just one example. I could give you literally thousands of examples, and other people could give you very similar examples as well. I stay away from any type of racially coded language. People can see what I am. You can see me on camera, you know what I am. I understand that people do search for keywords, so I will bear keywords in mind, but I do tend to stay away from racially coded language now. That hasn't affected my SEO, it hasn't affected my team, my ability to make sales. In fact, I'm making more than ever. So I tend to lean away, and I know that there are many others in the industry who also feel a similar way, whereas you will find other people who will sort of lean into that, but they understand that it's basically due to searches and they can sign off on that, and you'll find other people don't. So that's just me from my perspective, but you will find other people who will say contrary to what I've just said.
Thank you very much. Okay, so this talk triggered some questions and comments, very interesting. People are getting, they're obviously surprised that some keywords are still not banned, you know, and super offensive. So yeah, it's a very, the internet is the wild, wild west, and it's really hard to put a structure on that, I guess. So to get back on what Lacey was saying, because we are using this word, the whorearchy, and do you think, you guys, panelists, do you think that there is such a whorearchy in, whether if it's from the mainstream or within the industry? I will give you a quick example of many times I'm hearing stuff between cam models, typically cam girls, and porn stars, that cam girls, many of the cam girls that I've met didn't want to be assimilated to porn stars or content creators, OnlyFans sex content. So what do you think about this mix in our industry? Whoever wants to speak, maybe Lacey? Oh, and yeah, you want to get back on that? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. I think that there is definitely a hierarchy, whatever you call it. And I hear it all the time. And it's you know, even in the really tiny details where you know, one will say, oh, but she does this, and you know, I would never do that kind of thing. I think tends to then separate us. It's like, it's called othering, isn't it? Where you kind of distance yourself from somebody who does things that you think are actually less than. And I think it's terrible. I think it's a horrible thing, but it does happen all the time. I'm not sure what the answer is, apart from, you know, having a non-judgmental view, you know, and a supportive attitude towards, you know, everyone within our industry. But it can be very hurtful. It can be very damaging to people when someone in their own industry criticizes them and puts them down for very little, you know, little things. And that's the last thing we want, because as an industry, we are already kind of need to be protective because we get enough from out there criticizing us. So having criticism within, you know, come on guys, you know. Yeah, but what's the answer?
Absolutely. Yeah. Anyone else would like to add something about this, the potential hierarchy in the industry? Yeah, Colton? Oh. Or KACY, please.
Something interesting in my realm with trans women, over the last, I'd say 7 or 8 years, there's been an explosion of, it's always looking for the new face. We are constantly just looking for the new trans girl, the new trans girl. If you're on Twitter and you follow any trans sites or trans people, trans performers, you're going to constantly see just all of these new faces. And then what ends up happening, of course, is only so many of them are going to filter up, so to speak, and become bankable and be able to get more and more roles. And so it gets this very interesting, because I know a few of these newer girls and they just can't understand why aren't they getting more work, because they got some work. And it's just there's always a new face and they're always looking for the new face. But what filters to the top are those who then get a contract, let's say, with an Evil Angel, a few, or someone who does a lot of work for, let's say, a Groovy and their affiliates. And then there's another level where they're just, they're not able to get that kind of work, and they get a little bit resentful because they're like, well, why is she always getting the work? And my answer always is because she gets clicks, she gets buys, she drives revenue, and that's just the way it is in this business. But there tends to be then a resentfulness of those who are getting work. It's ameliorated a little bit because of the pandemic, and then we went into self-content creation, and so there was a little bit of a lessening of that, but it's still there, because I can just sometimes the resentment level is just so high. I'll be looking at social media, I'm like, someone's complaining that they're always getting all of the work. Why are they always getting all of the work? What about the rest of us, kind of feel? And sometimes it's not said that way, but you get that feeling. So it's one of the things in our corner that is a little bit of an issue, for lack of a better word, is that always looking for the new face. Who is the new trans girl? The debut of, the first of this, the first of that. And then they don't ever get any other work. And so then they're resentful. So there becomes a strata within us that, okay, if you're getting work, you must be doing something untoward to get the work. So it's kind of a vicious little cycle there.
Thank you. Colton, wanted to add something? No. Okay. Who else about this hierarchy? Do you feel that? Have you ever experienced anything if you're doing some in real life sessions or sex work, prostitution, etc., from people who are just doing webcam or movies, or do you feel there is a judgment or something?
I can remember, sorry, I can remember when I did some television work, you know, on the phones, on the late night, I can't remember what you call it, with one of the studios. And I was quite new to the industry and I was just trying out things to see what felt like me, what I enjoyed. And I did about a year of this kind of, you know, through the night, kind of taking calls and stuff. And I can remember meeting these young girls who would do this all the time. And they were very clear about how where they felt they sat and where others sat within the industry. And I can remember them, you know, being very kind of talking down about anybody who did sex work. You know, they didn't consider themselves, they were just, you know, taking calls, and, you know, they were on the TV screen, but it was non-contact. And the girls who were not glamour models, but actually who did sex work or porn, like myself, they were like, no, we don't talk to them. They're less than us. We're the glamour girls. And that's the first time I came across it, very much, you know, feeling I wasn't in with that crowd because I did porn, I did sex work. So I wasn't as good as, and I didn't kind of earn the big bucks they were earning, or didn't have the fans who sent them God knows what, you know, everything off their wish list and stuff like that. So
how do you feel about it?
It made me feel kind of just, you know, when you feel pushed out of the inner circle kind of thing. So I felt kind of, yeah, it was horrible. I didn't want to be one of them. I didn't want to, but I just felt that it was a very closed mind, and I hadn't come across that at that point until then. I mean, I've seen it everywhere since, but, you know, that was the first distinctions I saw in, we're better because we don't actually get our hands dirty, as it were. It's like we're less contact. And I've noticed once, you know, looking up the whorearchy, how the people who are put on the top are the ones who have the least contact with the client, or with sex work, the least physical contact, and the ones who are put right at the bottom have the most, and then the most likelihood of having, you know, police contact, etc.
Wow. And it's definitely not the hand that gets dirty in our business. Typically my ass. Colton, is there anything you would like to add?
I mean, I think it's interesting how that actually has inverted with OnlyFans, right? Because I mean, maybe what was it, 5 years ago? It was expected. I mean, like, even at least on the gay side, if you were like even a contract like performer for Falcon or whoever it was, you weren't making your living filming, you were making your living escorting. And then OnlyFans came along and it inverted that. And now it kind of, it's very fascinating to me, because a lot of these very successful OnlyFans male models are looking down at sex workers who actually are escorts. Like, they would never, ever in a million years do that. And it's like, anyone who's been around long enough, or who has observed this industry long enough, knows that that was not the case. It was the reverse. You worked your way up to be the kingpin of gay porn, only so that when you put your face on rentboy.com, you got a shit ton of bookings. And that's how you went home with your piles and piles of cash. And now it's a very different reality that we live in. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I have very neutral there. But I mean, even on the cam thing, it's like sex work light, sex work full, sex work whatever. It's very zero sum, and our world is zero sum. So I can understand why you feel like you lose if they win. But it kind of harps to what I always try to think about, especially on the internet these days. And what KACY said in introducing herself is, when I type something, my God, I kind of look at it sometimes and I'm like, is that really necessary? Do I have to put that out on the internet? That stays. And more often than not, when I go on a rant, when I get really pissed off, I can pretty much talk myself off and be like, that's just not worth it. And we do put so much negativity out there based off of this idea that the world is zero sum. If you win, I lose, vice versa.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Great points. Thank you. Who else would like to speak about a possible whorearchy? Prince. Yeah.
Yeah. I think some great points have been made. I'd say, just to add to the conversation, a element that does influence this is, I would say, intersectionality. So to just make that very simple for people who are not too familiar with the concept, it's taking people's overlapping identities into account to understand the sort of discrimination and prejudices they face. So, for example, a disabled fat Black woman doesn't just have a disability. She isn't just a woman. She isn't just Black. She's all of those things together, and that means that her experience will be inherently different from mine, despite the fact we share the same racial group. Also, differences in geography and culture. So, I mean, I think when we met, was it LA or Miami? Like, I've met people from different areas of the world, and sometimes you see how it's almost like a cultural mindset in different areas of the world. So, for example, I was in Bucharest for a summit like 4 months ago or something, and there were, I think, 4 porn stars out of about 700 people. And not kidding, there were people who just wouldn't speak to me because everybody else there was a cam girl or a studio owner, and the 4 porn stars, basically, nobody would speak to us because it was like, oh, well, you're porn stars and we don't affiliate. But you can look at it from this such a multi-layered discussion. So I think to the point that was made in regards to OnlyFans and the way in which that's impacting the industry, you will see a lot of discussions, very sadly, regarding people who say, oh, mainstream versus OF creator. Ultimately, our goals are very similar. People want to grow their brand, people want to make money. These are just different avenues. I think when escorting was mentioned, you've got people who are cam girls, then you have people who don't do porn at all, but maybe they're like nude models, glamour models. There are so many different layers, right? But ultimately, like, the end goals for people are the same. Like, generally, people have to make money to survive. People want to grow their brands, but these are just different avenues. So yeah, unfortunately, it does exist, but I think it's an interesting question because there are just so many different like layers behind that. The industry is a microcosm of wider society, so these things exist in wider society. Naturally, it is going to filter down to this industry. But I think similar to a point that they said, ultimately, like, we have enough from outside forces. You are as strong as your weakest link, right? So we recognize the differences in each other. We're not all the same, but also we recognize that we are the same in terms of sex workers. That's a very broad, encompassing term. It references so many people. Doesn't even have to even be somebody who just like sells sex, basically. Sex workers are a very broad term. We will be categorized the same by people outside the society anyway. Whether you're a nude model, whether you're an escort, whether you're a cam girl, whether you're a porn star, they're not going to look at the differences and the nuances there. You're just under that same umbrella. Therefore, you're going to receive a certain level of judgment or discrimination, should I say.
Yeah, thank you very much. I personally think more like you. Yeah, I saw it. I've been in this industry for 12 years, and I did many different shows because I've been working in different level of this industry, from escorting to affiliate programs. And the thing is, yeah, when a porn star is going to a B2B show, that we hear some feedbacks even from friends that are a bit surprising, you know. And the most impressive for me is the webcam world not willing to be associated to being porn stars or porn actresses. And I'm like, okay, but your vagina is still online. I mean, is there a difference if you're just, you know, with a sex toy or with a real penis? I mean, I don't get it. But well, yeah. Anyone would like to add anything about this struggle, about I don't know, this struggle in general, from the industry, from out of the industry, or being a sex worker? Anything you'd like to add? We have 10 more minutes. KACY?
It's not Tuesday, so I'll say it's Positivity Thursday. I'll bring up something that's kind of positive, and it's, you know, when I very first broke in, there was a large stigma, and there still is it a bit, that trans performers are dirty. You know, if you are a straight performer, you know, you couldn't perform with a trans performer because you would get a reputation. People would think you were dirty, you were diseased, and it's still out there a bit, but it's definitely evolved away from that. I mean, we have someone like Aubrey Kate, I believe she signed a contract with Evil Angel, you know, just, you know, a mainstream, quote unquote, mainstream company where she is a, you know, one of their star performers. And there is others. She's the first one that came to mind because that was one of the first ones to occur. So there has been, you know, some evolution where, you know, a good thing, where there was a whorearchy where, you know what, if you're a straight performer, you don't go with the trans performer. You're going to get categorized as dirty, diseased, blah, blah, blah. Not saying it doesn't exist still. I was getting some feedback. You know, I reached out to some of my colleagues and they talk about how sometimes there are some male performers who will not do scenes with them because they don't want to fall into that category. But they will contact them on the sly and look to have, you know, sex with them on the side because they want to, that they're into it, but they don't want to be publicly recognized or associated with us, for example. So it's not, I'm not saying it's gone. Believe you me, I'm not saying that. But it's definitely been an evolution in a good way, that it's less and less of a stigma that if you're a non-trans performer doing a scene with a trans performer. And so it's an evidence of an evolution. One other quick little evolution, because we talk about shemale a little bit. Again, it was something with the tags that evolved because some of the companies, shemale strokers became transational fantasies. Groovy got rid of all of their shemale sites and renamed them and rebranded them. So again, it was on a positive note that we can change as an industry. It's out there and we are evolving, and that's my Positivity Thursday message.
That's great. I love that. Can I just add a little bit to your Positive Thursday message? And I don't know what you think about this, so I'd be very interested to hear, is that something I've noticed with the growth of OnlyFans and the way people can earn a lot of money from having an OnlyFans account is that a lot of male performers have found, I want an OnlyFans, shouldn't just be for females. And we know basically that men buy porn, women don't really buy porn. They like to watch it, but they're not really the biggest you know, demographic who buy porn. So these male performers who are straight, well, I want an OnlyFans, I want to earn money. So they realize that actually men are buying porn, so they need to do content that is interesting to them. I see Carlton nodding here. So I've seen a lot of males say, right, okay, I'm gonna do male scenes, I'm going to do trans scenes, I'm going to, you know, cross over, as it were. It used to be this big straight or gay or trans, and now I'm seeing, because I'm shooting them in my studio, people are coming to the studio and saying, can we shoot you know, OnlyFans content? I want to do some male. Okay, I'm straight, I'm not gay, but I want to do this content. And a lot of trans performers are coming in to shoot with straight males who aren't really straight males, but you know, they like to say you know, to everybody. But I wonder whether that's, you know, we're talking about positivity, whether that's a positive thing. I know it's come out of, you know, wanting to sell, wanting to produce content that will be more acceptable to those who are buying. But I see it as positive. I don't know if you guys have an opinion on that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Things are evolving. And I think that what I really liked from this talk, and we are reaching to an end now, just a quick parenthesis. Yeah, I really like what, I mean, I didn't like, but it is the reality, what you were saying, KACY, about the dirty image of sex workers. And it's true that it's something that we keep hearing. And I always take this analogy with Uber driver. A Uber driver is taking care of his car. So if you have anyone out of this industry watching us tonight, please know that sex workers are actually taking a lot of care about their body and mind, you know. And so, yeah, and I've personally gotten more disease from straight married men out of the industry. So I don't know if it's for everyone the same, but yeah, it was, I mean, I do have this stigma of when I wouldn't escort anymore with straight men, married men without a condom. Anyways, yeah, thank you very much all for sharing. Again, as I was saying, very interesting, because for different perspectives, very, very complete for the big picture for our industry. Something that really caught my mind, and I would like to finish on that, is something that COLTON was saying about, you mentioned insecurities and issues when we were talking about stigmas. And I really think that it is what we're trying to do today, to share, to understand a little bit more how to deal with this situation and understand why it happens, so we can get some psychological weapons to fight back, you know, or to defend at least some shields. And I do think that insecurities, and I would even add the word fear, from people who are judging sex work and sex workers in general, it might come from that. This fear of not being good enough or whatever, or these insecurities. So maybe people who are judging sex workers and sex work should go to a therapist first before attacking honest people who are working and paying taxes, a lot of taxes, by the way. So really, thank you very much, you all, for sharing tonight, for being here, for using your voice to represent our industry. I feel very proud being represented by you all. And thank you very much to Pineapple Support. Donations are welcome. Pineapple Support has the purpose to help to strengthen our mental health and everyone who is struggling in our industry for unfair reasons, which are the stigmas. So thank you very much. Have a great day, everyone. I can't wait to see you all in person probably in January, I guess, and be safe. Thank you very much.